On this day in 1966, Deng Tuo, the former president of the People's Daily, committed suicide and became the first high-ranking cultural person in the party to die during the Cultural Revolution. Later, Tian Jiaying, Chai Mo, Yao Qin and other writers in the party followed suit. On May 16, 1966, People's Daily published Qi Benayu's big criticism article comment on the bourgeois standing of the front line, and Beijing Daily in the second half of the first page, transferred to the entire upper page of the second page. The article named Deng Tuo and said, "Who is Deng Tuo? It has been found out that he is a traitor. During the anti-Japanese war, he mixed into the party. He pretended to be active, defrauded the trust of the party and the people, and held an important position in the People's Daily. He often used his power to distort Marxism-Leninism and Mao Zedong thought, and promote and propagate his bourgeois revisionist thought. In the summer of 1957, he was a goose-feather fan on the bourgeois right. Deng Tuo, who has experienced ups and downs in the party's struggle and served as the editor-in-chief and president of the People's Daily, of course understands the qualitative meaning of this article and understands the murderous intent in the article. When the whole country is slipping into the crazy cultural revolution track, Qi Benayu's well-known name-calling and criticizing articles must be the prelude to a fatal disaster. Deng Tuo was exhausted, and Qi Wen's publication made him lose his last spiritual support. Since the publication of Yao Wenyuan's article on Hai Rui's dismissal from office, Deng Tuo fought hard, hoping to restore the situation. It now appears that all efforts will not work. As early as the end of November 1965, after major newspapers in Beijing reprinted Yao Wenyuan's comment on the newly edited historical drama Hai Rui dismissed from office, Deng Tuo stated several times at the meetings of the Beijing Municipal Party Committee, "This discussion will create an academic circle. A good atmosphere. It is to really follow the editor's guide of the Beijing Daily and implement the double hundred policy, and distinguish right from wrong based on facts. Articles should convince people with reason, not win with power. Let people talk, not one-sided. In the truth everyone is equal in front of everyone. Excessive criticism must be corrected, and people cannot be beaten to death with a single stick." On November 30th, Deng Tuo held a meeting of colleges and universities to arrange a discussion on Yao Wen, demanding that the Beijing Daily commentary prevail, start academic discussions. How did he know that arranging these affairs is the end of his life's work? From evening chats in Yanshan to notes on Three Family Village. Looking back, as early as August 1958, Deng Tuo was approved to leave the People's Daily, but the handover was not completed until February 1959. For this reason, the editors of the People's Daily held a staff meeting to bid farewell to Deng Tuo. Facing the crowd of colleagues, Deng Tuo sang his passionate classical poem Farewell to Comrades from People's Daily. 20 years of pens and dragons. It is clearly neither a dream nor a smoke. Articles are full of paper and scholars are tired. A comrade in arms through thick and thin. Know your merits and demerits with your fingers. Caring the most is the last to be the first. I have one pride in my life. The climax of the whole country is looking forward to the sky. From July 1949 as the editor-in-chief of the People's Daily to his departure in February 1959, he and the People's Daily have a special relationship for 10 years. Even if he leaves at this time, how can he break his inextricable connection with the People's Daily? In April 1957, Mao Zedong reprimanded Deng Tuo face-to-face. At the Nanning Conference in March 1958, Mao Zedong once again criticized Deng Tuo by name at the Central Work Conference on the grounds of criticizing the anti-Rash advance editorial. After returning to Beijing from Nanning, Deng Tuo formally submitted his resignation report. For Deng Tuo's situation, Pen Zhen, his old chief during the war years, was very familiar with and sympathized with him. Through the Central Organization Department, he was transferred to the Beijing Municipal Party Committee as the secretary of the Secretariat. At this time, the Beijing Municipal Party Committee happened to be running a theoretical publication and needed someone to take charge of it. Deng Tuo was the ideal candidate that Pen Zhen thought of. On July 14, 1958, listened to the report of the Propaganda Department of the Beijing Municipal Party Committee on the establishment and title. He said on the spot, "It will be easy when Deng Tuo comes." Arranged by Pen Zhen, Deng Tuo joined the Beijing Municipal Party Committee Secretariat in February 1959, in charge of culture and education. According to the Division of Labor, it is said that Deng Tuo should be in charge of the Beijing Daily, but in this way, he will have a close relationship with the people he used to work, which is quite subtle. Therefore, Pen Zhen assigned the work of Beijing Daily to Zhen Tianxiang. The secretary of the Beijing Municipal Party Committee all respected Deng Tuo and knew that he was an expert in running newspapers, so they often communicated with Deng Tuo about the Beijing Daily. In 1950, Deng Tuo and his wife took a group photo with their 5 children. Since 1961, the central government has implemented the 8-character policy of adjustment, consolidation, enrichment, and improvement to correct some erroneous practices of the Great Leap Forward. Deng Tuo actively supported these principles of seeking truth from facts. On January 11 at the beginning of the year, Fan Jin, the president of Beijing Daily, conveyed a speech about newspaper propaganda by Deng Tuo. The general idea was to promote reading, and the newspaper should publish more stories about the ancients striving to become stronger and reading angrily. This is about advocating for people to fight disasters. After hearing this speech, the editor of Beijing Evening News approached Deng Tuo and asked him to write an article for the evening news. Deng Tuo promised to set up a column Yinshan Evening Talk in the supplement of Wisdo in the evening, and published his first article One Third of Life on March 19, 1961, advocating the style of reading. Yinshan Evening Chat was welcomed by readers, which made the editors of Frontline not to be outdone. They believed that Deng Tuo was the editor-in-chief of Frontline and should write articles for this magazine, so they repeatedly asked him to set up a column in Frontline. Deng Tuo agreed willingly, but felt that writing the manuscript by himself might miss the editorial deadline, so he proposed to ask others to cooperate. As a result, Liao Masha, the head of the United Front work of the Municipal Party Committee, and Wu Han, the deputy mayor, were dragged into the horse. On September 20, 1961, Deng Tuo, Wu Han, and Liao Masha had dinner at the Sichuan restaurant while discussing writing for Frontline. Deng Tuo suggested that 3 people jointly open a column of essays and call it Sanjiakan. So came up with the playful name of Sanjia Village Notes. Regarding the signature, Deng Tuo proposed to follow the example of Ma Tiding, and the participants took a character from each person's name. Everyone present agreed that Wu Han took the word Wu, Deng Tuo's pen Nankan, and he took the word Nan, and Liao Masha took the word Sha, and called it Wu Nansha. Later, Liao proposed to use his pen name Fan Xin with the star character, so he named it Wu Nangsing. The third is to agree that the article is based on a page number of Frontline magazine, a 1,000-character essay, a topic of your choice, 1 article in each issue, and writing in turn. They appointed Li Yun as the contact person for the manuscript of Notes of 3 Family Villages on the spot. In 1952, Deng Tuo and his wife lived in the dormitory of People's Daily in Cinder Hutong. From its publication in 1961 to its closure in 1964, Sanjia Village Notes published a total of 198 articles, 5 of which were not written by Deng, Liao, and Wu. During this period, Deng Tuo was able to continuously write Yinshan Evening Chats and participate in the writing of Sanjia Village Notes. Promoted. But in the mid-1960s, as the Sino-Soviet debate intensified, the atmosphere of grasping class struggle in China became more and more intense, and the active ideological atmosphere gradually disappeared. The Notes of 3 Family Village, which reflects active thoughts, bears the brunt of suspicion. In March 1963, the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China approved and forwarded the report of the party group of the Ministry of Culture on the suspension of ghost shows. In May, Jiang Xing went to Shanghai, and with the support of K. Qingji, he organized an article criticizing the drama Li Huan Ion. Liao Masha's article Theory of Ghosts and Harmless published in the Beijing Evening News was criticized. This is a blow to the 3 Family Village. Liao Masha had to conduct a self-criticism in the United Front Work Department of the Beijing Municipal Party Committee. On February 18, 1965, Liao Masha's review was published in the Beijing Evening News. At that time, Pen Zhen believed that this method could be used to repay Liao Masha's debts. He stated, Liao Masha did a good job in checking Theory of Ghosts and Harmless. It's the other party's problem. After Liao Masha made the statement, he went to the suburbs of Beijing to carry out the 4 cleanups. Wu Han felt that the environment was dangerous, so he wrote to Deng Tuo saying that it was difficult to find a topic and that he was busy with work, so he suggested that he no longer participate in the Sanjia village to write articles. Deng Tuo and Liao Masha tacitly agreed. Notes of 3 Family Village came to an end in the last article Death and Advance. Boycott Yao Wenai Yuan's comment on the new historical drama Hai Rui dismissed from office. In August 1964, the North China Bureau of the Communist Party of China held a meeting at the Baidehe Conference and decided to publish an article criticizing Wuhan's moral inheritance. Li Yun received a call from Pen Zhen and Lu Ren from Baidehe and rushed there to write a critical article. At the same time, Lu Ren and Deng Tuo called Wuhan to Baidehe to write a review. After finishing Li Yun's article, Deng Tuo revised and finalized it, and titled the article "Is the Morality of the Proletariat to the Exploiting Class a Revolution or an Inheritance? Discussion with Comrade Wu Nanxing on the Theory of Moral Inheritance," signed by Jin Shiwei, the homonym of the Beijing Municipal Party Committee, and an editor's note was added in front of it. Editor's note: Comrade Jin Shiwei's article is a principled and serious criticism of Comrade Wu Nanxing's moral inheritance theory. We think this is a very interesting debate. Comrade Wu Nanxing's two articles, Speaking of Morality and Revisiting Morality, were published in the Sanjia Village Notes column of this magazine. Notes of Sanjia Village is a column of essays written by several authors in turn, all signed by Wu Nanxing. Now it seems that we took this approach in itself inappropriately, because in fact the article was neither created collectively nor did the authors agree completely. Comrade Wu Nanxing's two articles Speaking of Morality and More About Morality were read by the editorial department of this journal. At that time, we did not consider the morality of the exploiting classes from the fundamental question of revolution or inheritance. Comrade Wu Nanxing's article only made some minor revisions, and agreed to publish it. This is an error of principle. At the same time, it is also wrong to make unprincipled accommodation on issues of principle. This article was not published later, and the reason is still a mystery. It can only be said that there is a bigger disaster waiting for Wuhan and Deng Tuo. When Liao Masha and Wuhan were successively charged with crimes, Deng Tuo's side was also experiencing a surge. After Yao Wen's article was published, on November 13, 1965, Deng Tuo called Fan Jian, Li Qi, and Li Yun to discuss countermeasures. During the discussion, Deng Tuo said, "I don't know how Wuhan reacted." After that, he picked up the phone and called Wuhan, asking, "You read the article, how was it?" Wuhan said aggrievedly, "If it is an academic question, I can argue with him." He puts a political hat on, which is framed. The article I wrote in 1959, how do I know that there was going it alone in 1961? Putting down the phone, Deng Tuo thought that what Wuhan said made sense. He said vaguely that he had heard that Hai Rui dismissed from office had something to do with the Pen Hui issue. This meeting decided that Frontline and Beijing Daily carried out academic criticism. As a result, the article had not yet been written, and at the end of November, the situation took a turn for the worse, and it was impossible to refuse to publish Yao Wen. At this time, Pen Zhen still tried to control criticism within the scope of academics. On November 28, Pen Zhen convened a meeting in the Great Hall of the People and arranged to reprint Yao Wen. As he made the arrangement, he couldn't help sighing. Wuhan was engaged in the struggle for democracy before liberation. Deng Tuo, who was beside Pen Zhen, immediately said, "According to Wuhan's performance, it cannot be said that he is anti-party and anti-socialism, and he cannot be beaten to death with a single stick. This is true, and we cannot fool others." Deng Tuo's sketches of ballet dancers for his daughter Deng Xiaolan. On December 2, 1965, Deng Tuo and Fan Jing convened a meeting of members of the academic criticism groups of Beijing Daily and Frontline to convey the attitude of the Municipal Party Committee. Deng Tuo said, "We must have a basic attitude towards this debate." He explained the difference between the three commentaries of Liberation Army Daily, People's Daily and Beijing Daily, saying, "The commentary of Liberation Army Daily is clear because the army does not engage in contention and academic discussions." But now Wuhan's question has not been concluded. It has not been confirmed that Hai Rui dismissed from office is a big poisonous weed, and it is not because of criticism of Hai Rui dismissed from office, Wuhan also dismissed from office. Wuhan didn't write dramas originally, and when others asked him to write, he fell into it while writing. He compared himself to Hai Rui, just like Guo Lao compared himself to Cai Wenji, and Men Chao compared himself to Li Huanayan. Li Huanayan was indeed scolding Jia Sideo. Wuhan's question depends on the development, to what extent it will develop in the future. Deng Tuo said that the discussion should be made as an academic issue first. To cultivate a good atmosphere, we should deal with academic issues first. Even political issues can be dealt with more safely. Political issues and academic issues should be separated. If the distinction is not clear at once, they should be dealt with as academic issues first. To reverse the bad atmosphere, of course, Yao Wen cannot avoid raising political issues. Everyone is equal before the truth and has the right to speak. It's not that if you criticize, you will be disastrous, and you will be in danger of being destroyed, and you will not be able to work. Criticism is for better work. Excessive criticism should also be corrected, and it cannot be killed with a single stick. Now the first thing to do is to ease the situation. Someone should write an article. Make sure which parts of Yao Wen's article are right and which parts go too far, which parts Wuhan is right and which parts are really wrong. This great academic debate is inevitable, and it involves the evaluation of historical figures and moral viewpoints. Deng Tuo pointed out that when studying Hai Rui dismissed from office, everyone can study the problems of the script itself, and the materials and viewpoints must be tenable, and Yao Wen's quotations are flawed. Wuhan said that he wrote on Hai Rui in 1959, which was against right opportunism. Later, Ma Lianliang asked him to write the script, and revised 7 drafts, and the draft was finalized on August 8, 1961. It was staged in the same year and played until August 1962. His original title was to write about Hai Chui, but the 4th draft was changed to Hai Chui dismissed from office, which was changed after everyone's comments. Deng Tuo's opinion was supported by Peng Zhen. In early December, Peng Zhen instructed Deng Tuo to write an article criticizing Wuhan. Deng Tuo immediately asked Li Yun to refer to the Jin Shiwei article mentioned above that was suppressed. Because of this basis, Deng Tuoxin's article was published very quickly. The title was From Hai Rui Dismissed from Office, to the Theory of Moral Inheritance Discussion with Comrade Wuhan on Several Theoretical Issues, signed by Zhao Kai. The editor's note of frontline added before the article, Comrade Zhao Kai's article, from the issue of Comrade Wuhan's new historical drama Hai Chui dismissed from office to some basic points of view on his theory of moral inheritance, put forward different opinions in principle, discuss with Comrade Wuhan. Comrade Zhao Kai linked the moral inheritance theory with Hai Rui's dismissal for discussion, and we agree with this. I hope that readers will follow the policy of letting 100 flowers bloom and 100 schools of thought content to enthusiastically participate in the discussion on the issue of Hai Chui's dismissal from office and other related issues arising from it, so that our science and art can be further developed. The rest of this note is related. Jin Shiwei's notes are basically the same. Deng Tuo sent the article to Peng Zhen, who thought it was too simple and needed to be revised. After Deng Tuo rewrote it, it was circulated by the secretaries of the Municipal Party Committee. Peng Zhen finalized the draft, signed it as Xianyang Shen, and published it with prominent status in Frontline and Beijing Daily on December 12. This article presents different opinions on Wuhan's theory of moral inheritance in the tone of an academic discussion. The editor's note of the original article was deleted when it was published. Deng Tuo and his wife Ding Yulan in the 1950s. On the second day after Xianyang Shen's article was published, according to the basic tone of the Beijing Municipal Committee, Beijing Daily published Li Yun's Is There Anything Wrong with Hai Rui dismissed from office? On December 25, Frontline published an article evaluating historical figures with a revolutionary critical spirit by Li Yun signed by Ai Liun. Continued to emphasize that Hai Rui dismissed from office should be treated under the policy of contending among 100 schools of thought. While rushing to write Xianyang Shen's article, Deng Tuo wrote to Wuhan according to Peng Zhen's instructions, asking him to quickly write a self-examination about Hai Rui's dismissal from office. The letter said, I am afraid that the main problem with your thinking is that you have not clarified the fundamental problem of historical materialism. Whether your article is self-criticism or criticism of Yao Wen's article, we believe that it should be fully published. A lot of worries. After listening to Deng Tuo's opinion, Wuhan immediately wrote the article Self-Criticism on Hai Chui Dismissed from Office, explaining the relevant facts and historical basis. It shows that the C-drama has nothing to do with going alone and reversing the case. But on some issues, he admitted mistakes against his will. Wuhan's inspection was published in the Beijing Daily on December 27. Out of his own experience, Deng Tuo already felt the complexity of Yao Wen's article. On December 19, 1965, at the Frontline team leader meeting, Deng Tuo pointed out that more than one person had written articles on the issue of Hai Rui. As early as 1959, Liberation Daily published Zhang Xingyu's Nan Bao Gong Hai Rui, and an editor's note said that Hai Rui's story was widely circulated. This person praised Hai Rui a lot for not being famous and not for profit. After Yao Wen was published, Wen Weipo published Zhang Wen again, but did not publish the editor's note of Liberation Daily at the same time. Deng Tuo said very suspiciously that if you want to criticize, you should criticize. Now that Zhang Wen is published, but he has left a note of his own, there may be something famous here. After the meeting, Deng Tuo asked Li Yun to ask Wuhan who Zhang Xingyu was, and suggested that Wuhan's secretary could write a letter from the reader and send it to Wen Weipo, asking why the Jifang Daily had published an article praising Hai Rui. Criticize others by checking yourself. But this matter has not yet been implemented, and the situation has become even more out of hand. On January 16, 1966, Su Likan convened a meeting of the editorial departments of 6 newspapers and periodicals in Beijing, still keeping the discussion of Yao Wen within the academic category. Su Likan said, according to regulations, relevant critical articles must be sent to the office of the Central Propaganda Department. Li Yun, who attended the meeting, spoke according to Deng Tuo's instructions, we have no plan to get involved in this discussion. Frontline has limited space, and the current work needs to be publicized, targeted at workers, peasants, and soldiers, and popularized. We have published 3 articles, mainly to pay off debts, because we have published 2 articles on morality in the past. Our article elicited Wuhan's self-criticism, which gave everyone a target for criticism. In the future, if there are political conclusion articles on the Wuhan issue, we will reprint them. The conflict caused by Xiangyang Shen. On February 3, 1966, Peng Zhen presided over an enlarged meeting of the Group of 5 and drafted the outline of the report on the current academic discussion, that is, the February outline. But during this period, something unexpected happened to Deng Tuo. Guan Fen, who was not familiar with Deng Tuo in the past, suddenly visited Deng Tuo at night and had a conversation. The next day Deng Tuo told Li Yun that Kang Shen had called him earlier and said that Guan Fen had an opinion on the Xiangyang Shen article, and you could make an appointment to discuss it. Guan Fen came immediately and told Deng Tuo that Xiangyang Shen's article did not touch on politics, but he was actually trying to excuse Wuhan. Especially you, who wrote an article with Wuhan, it is inappropriate to do so. Wuhan's talk about inheriting loyalty and filial piety is not abstract, but has its specific content. Talking about filial piety is scolding us. Guan Fen also raised some opinions that were different from Deng Tuo's. Deng Tuo said to Guan Fen, Beijing Daily is not under my control. I wrote Xiangyang Shen's article, and originally wanted to do some inspections in the article. Deng Tuo made a special statement to Guan Fen, Peng Zhen has nothing to do with this matter. Regarding Guan Fen's accusation, Deng Tuo said, it's not that I didn't talk about political issues, it was at the end of the article. Later Deng Tuo told Li Yun that Guan Fen also said a lot of flattering things to him that day. On the eve of the storm, what was Kang Shen's purpose in sending someone to talk? Deng Tuo didn't figure it out. Then, the situation deteriorated seriously. From March 28 to 30th, Mao Zedong had 3 conversations with Kang Shen, Jiang Qing, and others in Hangzhou, accusing the Beijing Municipal Committee of being unable to penetrate the needle and pouring water on it, and wanted to disband. He also declared that the Central Propaganda Department is the palace of the King of Hades and wants to defeat the King of Hades and liberate the little ghosts. Mao Zedong also named and criticized notes from 3 Family Village and Yinchen Evening Chat as anti-party and anti-socialism. This constituted a serious crime for Deng Tuo, and he could not be relieved at that time. From April 6 to April 11. Under the auspices of the 3-person leadership group of Lu Ran, Wan Li, and Zhen Tianxiang, and the 4-person office composed of Li Qi, Song Shuo, Fan Jin, and Zhang Wensong, the Beijing Evening News, Beijing Daily, Frontline, Beijing Publishing House, Bureau of Higher Education, Bureau of Education, Bureau of Culture and other units criticized Deng Tuo in the Communication Office of the Municipal Party Committee, mainly asking questions about Deng Tuo, free market, and other aspects consistent with the Secretariat. Deng Tuo's articles are correct except for notes on 3 Family Village. But from this day on, Deng Tuo stopped working and focused on inspections. The Beijing Municipal Party Committee could no longer keep Deng Tuo. Not only that, but also to organize criticism of Deng Tuo. Deng Tuo's handwriting in the spring of 1966, Infinite Scenery on Dangerous Peaks. On April 16, 1966, Beijing Daily published an article criticizing Deng Tuo and others in 3 pages under the title Criticism on Sanjia Village and Yinchen Evening Talk. On the other hand, Peng Zhen called Deng Tuo himself after these materials were published, advising him not to be nervous, to treat it correctly, and to be strict with himself. Lu Ren also sent someone to comfort Deng Tuo and let him deal with it calmly. Yang Shulat, the former propaganda minister of the Beijing Municipal Party Committee, visited Deng Tuo. When he talked about the current situation, both of them felt very heavy. Deng Tuo said, "I made preparations to figure out the problem after a year." Yang Shu shook his head. "I think this time may be longer, it may take 2 or 3 years. Unfortunately, this national catastrophe swept across China as far as 10 years long." Criticism of Deng Tuo heated up rapidly. On May 8, the Liberation Army Daily published an article organized by Zhang Qing and signed by Gao Ju, "Fire at the Anti-Party and Anti-Socialist Black Line," pointing out that Deng Tuo blared the way for the restoration of the bourgeoisie and accused Yinchen evening chat is out-and-out anti-party and anti-socialist slang. On the same day, Guanfeng pseudonym Himing published an article "Keep Your Eyes Open, Distinguish the True from the False" in Guangming Daily, singing the same tune as Gao Ju's article, all aimed at Beijing Daily's criticism of Sanjia Village on April 16. The article stated that Frontline and Beijing Daily criticized Sanjia Village as false criticism, saying that Deng Tuo is the head of the so-called Sanjia Village who is anti-party and anti-socialism. This article was submitted to Mao Zedong for review in advance, and Mao Zedong said, "I have read Himing's article, and I like it." Shanghai's Jifang Daily and Wenwei Post simultaneously published Yao Wenai Yuan's article comment on Sanjia Village in Evening Chat and Sanjia Village Notes the Reactionary Essence, which was reprinted by major newspapers across the country the next day. The article stated that Deng Tuo, Wuhan, and Liao Masha's article in the name of Sanjia Village was a well-planned, purposeful, planned, and organized anti-socialist attack. Support and praise, dig out the deepest roots. Deng Tuo completely lost the right to argue and could only accept the humiliation silently. Deng Tuo and his wife Ding Yulan. The final blow to Deng Tuo. On May 16, 1966, the May 16th notice was passed, marking the official start of the 10-year-long cultural revolution that had ravaged China. Pen Zhen, Lu Ding'ai, Luo Ruqing, and Yang Shankan were imprisoned ever since. On this day, all major newspapers across the country, including the People's Daily, simultaneously reprinted Qi Binai's article comment on the bourgeois standing of Frontline and Beijing Daily published in the 7th issue of Red Flag. Qi Binai's article actually set the tone for Deng Tuo's problem, and such a major case will not change for a long time. Take the anti-rightists as an example. At that time, 10 years had passed, and the situation of rightists was even more difficult than before. After reading Qi Binai's article, Deng Tuo finally made up his mind to bid farewell to the world and the suffering that was about to pounce on him. On the evening of May 17, Deng Tuo kept his wife and children away, and Deng Tuo stayed at his desk until late at night. In the first letter, he wrote to Pen Zhen, Lu Wen, and colleagues from the Municipal Party Committee. "Although in this struggle, I have become a target of public criticism, a nationwide critical movement is developing successfully, and people unanimously condemn Yinchen Evening Chat and gangsters in Sanjia Village for their anti-party and anti-socialist crimes. However, I have been trying to further study Chairman Mao's works with current problems in order to keep up with the development of the revolutionary situation. Many writers of workers, peasants, and soldiers said, I was very angry after listening to the radio and reading the anti-party and anti-socialist slander of Deng Tuo in the newspaper. I completely understand their feelings. I have absolutely no complaints against anyone who criticizes me. As long as it is beneficial to the party and the revolutionary cause, no matter what pain and sacrifice I personally suffer, I am willing. It was so, it is so, and it will always be so." What is the meaning of the article? I hope that the organization will designate some people to conduct an assessment. In Yinchen Evening Talk and Notes on 3 Family Village, I wrote a total of 171 articles. How many articles have problems? What is the nature of the problem? I believe this is an objective existence, and I will definitely figure it out. In a long letter, Deng Tuo described in detail his 2 arrests and release from prison in history. He complained, therefore, I do not think that I am infiltrating into the party, pretending to be active, and defrauding the party and the people trust. I think that I have always been working hard for the revolutionary cause under the leadership of the party. Deng Tuo finally wrote in this rather long suicide note. As a member of the Communist Party, I should have stood the severe test in this great revolution. It is a pity that I have recently suffered from old illnesses, and procrastinating on it will only increase the burden on the party and the people. However, my heart will always be toward the beloved party, toward the beloved Chairman Mao. When I'm leaving you guys, let me shout again. Long live the great, glorious, and correct Communist Party of China. Long live our beloved leader Chairman Mao. Long live the victory of the great Mao Zedong thought. Long live the victory of the great cause of socialism and communism throughout the world. Deng Tuo. May 17, 1966. He committed suicide in the middle of the night on May 17 or the early morning of the 18th, and used his death as a final struggle. What is even more tragic is that he repeatedly wrote the slogan "Long Live" in his suicide note, as if he was in the gloomy palace of a feudal dynasty. After writing the long suicide note to Pen Zhen and Lu Ran, the time may have entered the early morning of May 18. After dawn, any accident may happen, and time is running out. In this last short time, Deng Tuo wrote a farewell text message to his wife Ding Yulan. When I met and fell in love with the young Ding Yulan in the base area behind the anti-Japanese war, Deng Tuo had such brilliant feelings and wrote many intriguing and beautiful poems. However, when he finally walked toward the god of death in a hurry, he had no time to write poems, and it can be seen how eager Deng Tuo was to go to death. Yulan. Because I rushed to write a long letter to the municipal party committee, I didn't have time to write to you. At the moment, my heart beats very irregularly, and I am troubled by bowel disease again, so I won't write any more. You never think of me, forget me forever. I have caused you enough suffering, and from now on you will forever undo the trauma I have given you. Farewell, dear.